This meeting is being recorded.
Got it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Giles Edwards, and you are watching and/or listening to Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast. Greg Smalley couldn't be here today. He's off fighting crime in Kentucky. But with me instead as co-host, I have Pete Trbovich, who, hello, Pete.
It's running the asylum.
He's appropriately excited to be here. And we have a special double guest.
And woke, too.
Oh.
I missed last week's woke thing, so I had to keep a rainbow shirt for this time.
That's right. Continued Happy Woke Month. With us as a double guest, both for the Weird Movie News and to discuss his film Katernica, we have filmmaker, writer, and all-around literary guy, I'm guessing, James Newton. Hello, James.
Thank you very much for having me here, Giles and Pete. It's very kind of you to invite me on.
Oh, well, we are happy to have you. And so we got 8 things to cover, and I'm going to oh gosh, have my first break here. Here we go. That's a big green button. Let me make sure it's open so that when I have it, we can dive right to me sharing the screen. Let me tidy up my window space here because, golly, it's gotten crowded on my dashboard. Okay, I'm going to hit this button, and I'm going to hit this button, and I'm going to hit share, and you're going to tell me if you see someone.
Yes, I do.
All right, so a bit of bleak news to kick things off. The day we're recording this, which is the day before we post it, we heard of the tragic passing of great Canadian actor and just great actor without even any national modifiers, Donald Sutherland, pictured here in what is to 366, I think, his most iconic role as the star of the, I believe, 1973 film Don't Look Now, which was incidentally the very first certified weird movie. And so he has passed on at the age of 88, and I certainly wish him a very peaceful rest and a great many thanks for a wonderful long career. And,
is that the only one of his movies that's on the list, or do we have Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
We have at least one other. We probably have more, but Johnny Got His Gun. For those of you who have seen it, he plays none other than Jesus Christ, as appears to the titular character in his sort of hazy, drugged-up moments of unconsciousness, and acts as a sort of paternal guide to him alongside his memories and imaginings of his actual father. So we have never been a stranger to this great man. The first role that I remember really appreciating who he was in Citizen X, where he played opposite Stephen Ray and alongside Max von Sydow in a it was an HBO movie from '88 that had to do with the pursuit of a serial killer in Soviet Russia. And he was sort of one of the good guy military types who helped out the investigation. Oh, and we have skipped forward a lot. So let's skip back if it will let me. And it won't. There we go. So rest in peace, Donald, and thanks again. Now, first thing we're going to talk about, normally I describe the stills as Greg challenges me. James, do you feel like maybe describing this image we see here?
We usually do this for the people who aren't getting video.
Yeah, well, this is the, I think it was the first released image, and it was from the teaser trailer, I remember, few weeks ago, from Francis Ford Coppola's long-awaited new film, Megalopolis.
That's right. And
I'm very excited about it, I have to say.
Yeah, we are too. I believe that is Mr. Driver standing dramatically poised on the edge of a very, very nice looking window, gazing over a hazy city. And greater context for those who have seen the trailer know that he is thinking about perhaps ending things. But we don't have to worry about that being the fate of this film, because Lionsgate has stepped up and are going to give it the proper theatrical release that it deserves. And from my experience with Lionsgate, they seem exactly the kind of people to do this sort of thing. Pete, any thoughts on Megalopolis? So we have discussed it a few times before.
You could have found a bigger thumbnail.
Yeah, well, hang on. Let me, let's see.
Anyway.
There we go. We're going to make this.
Oh
my
my
God.
goodness. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Just, I could have found a higher resolution one anyway.
All right.
But we've dwelled on this, and we're all very excited. Anything that divides those snooty McSnootersons of cans is going to be exciting for us. And when we hear words like decadent and excessive, then, well, we know it's probably headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
So we'll give you more news as we can, but I guess we're probably going to have to wait till it shows up. I think late September is when that hits the cinema screens. So I know I'll be seeing it. And that's the Megalopolis news. So some good news for that. Mr. Coppola's thing will be seen on a big screen by more people. So excellent. And we will dive now to the second bit of news. Pete, what are we looking at here?
Oh, okay. That's a shot from Kinds of Kindness, and we've got this woman in a burgundy pantsuit doing a kind of pose, standing in front of a blue car with a wheelchair patient off to one side, and this looks like a parking lot of some kind of institution or office building, perhaps. And this is a shot from Kinds of Kindness by Dogtooth Yorgos Lanthimos, I believe his name is.
Yorgos Lanthimos is the guy.
Yes, of Dogtooth and the Lobster. I'm trying to remember all of his
Killing of a Sacred Deer, and of course, I've seen his first movie, Canetta, which I will say nothing about right now to maintain the civil tone. James, you a follower of Mr. Lanthimos at all?
I've seen a couple of his films. I watched Poor Things recently.
Poor Things is I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, and I have to say it's nice to see one of the prominent filmmakers around today being so idiosyncratic, and his films seeming so personal. And he kind of links back to the two films that we just mentioned so far, Don't Look Now and Megalopolis. You've got a very distinct style with those two filmmakers who've made those movies. To have a high-profile filmmaker who's winning Academy Awards or being nominated for them, and to producing films that are really quite personal and explorations of well, they're not what you would call typically commercial American movies, but they star these big American stars like Emma Stone. I think that's an entirely positive thing. And I have to say, her performance in Poor Things was fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to this film. I didn't know anything about it until you sent me the trailer and asked me to look at it, but it was intriguing, and I couldn't tell you what it's about. But
yeah, well, it's as an anthology film, it's probably about a few things, but it looks like there's an overarching, I guess we might finally be able to hit a Lanthimos world style now that he has established himself both artistically and indeed commercially and critically. So that's always a happy sign for the likes of us to have big movies that are weird, because there are many wonderful weird movies of all sizes, but by the nature of the term, most of them aren't big in the way Lanthimos and certainly Francis Ford Coppola will be reaching for with their resources and reputation to work with. So yes, Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, oh gosh, Jesse Plemons is in this, Margaret Qualley Hong. Yep, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be an anthology, so I'll be interested to see how that comes off, because I'm always a little skeptical of anthology films, because I don't mind short films, and fusing a bunch together can have mixed results. But it's Lanthimos, so I'm sure at the very worst it'll be good. And it's got Emma Stone, so that's always going to help.
And he's worked with that cast before, right? So all those guys are in, apart from Jesse Plemons. I think they're all in Poor Things. So he's built up a bank of collaborators he works with regularly, it seems.
Yes, and I believe the screenwriter for this film is one he's worked with almost exclusively, with the one break being Poor Things being an adaptation of another work. So this is going to be core Lanthimos with his current posse. So rock and roll there. That's oh gosh, let's see if this information screen is telling me when this is actually coming out. I'm not seeing any dates. I'm sure it's soon. I'm sure Greg sent me the link for good reason. So any day or week now. I'd tell you more, but I am a little out of it. But we're gonna not have that stop us.
All right.
Go to this next image.
Moving right along.
Moving right along, and
yeah, Animalia.
Animalia. This is looking very gilded.
Yeah. Well, we have what looks like, I guess, a ballroom that's substituting as a dining room because it's a huge, expansive space with chandeliers all over it, and only one tiny table with a family gathered at it in the center of it, in a very sepia-toned image with lots of brown.
Lots of brown, muted
What appears to be a
bronze.
fancy mansion or maybe a theater. And as I understand it, this movie, which is again Animalia, is a pregnant woman who is left alone when her husband goes on a business trip, only to have some kind of supernatural event happen throughout the entire, that basically is taking over the country or the world or what. There's like some large scale disaster that happens from that. And that's as far as I've read.
That certainly seemed to be as much as the trailer. Do you have any gleanings about this, James?
It was the first I'd heard of it. So thank you again for pointing this in my direction. I thought, I mean, certainly very striking visually. That's what it seems to be, right? I mean, you can tell just from that image that we're seeing there, it's very sumptuous. But all the way through, and one thing I noticed, I hadn't picked up on that still before. I'm not sure whether it was in the trailer or not, which I saw earlier today. But that kind of color scheme, the whole film seems to be that sort of goldy, beigey in my mind's eye. From memory. So there's a definite clear aesthetic there, which I think's interesting. It's clearly a filmmaker who's got a very clear vision here. What's the country of origin?
Country of origin, got a triple shot here: Morocco, France, and Qatar. So definitely desert, or certainly arid land motif.
Yeah.
I remember, yes, the trailer did have that ambiguous but massive dust thing going on in a sort of deserty milieu, and I seem to recall streaks of a supernatural green happening within whatever that destructive dust cloud was. So
yeah. It didn't feel from looking at it, it didn't seem to have that kind of dryness that something like Dune or Dune 2 have, right? It would seem to be going for something like, again, the word sumptuous is wrong, but that kind of golden sheen to it rather than something drier to me.
Yeah, there's an opulent, well, certainly with this still, which just shows up for like fraction of a second in the trailer, if I remember correctly. And I just want to mention here, because I'm only noticing it just now, that I am seeing the longest chaise longue I have ever seen. There's this wonderful gilded couch that runs the entire length of the wall behind this tiny little table that's been set up in the middle, and it looks like it even comes around to the other side. So I bet this couch goes around the entire item. That would, probably best as a dance floor. 3 chandeliers, probably looking at 12 to 16 foot high ceilings, curtains. Like, man, I'd mortgage my house for those curtains. Those are fantastic. So there's definitely some great visual look, very nebulous thing involving a pregnant heroine and her encounter with not just supernatural in general, but it looks like there's some sort of holy fool character showing up in the trailer. So this looks very promising, and this is coming out now in theaters, I believe, from MSP Films. So that is here for our enjoyment. Also here for, well, eventually here for our enjoyment is this. And I say eventually somewhat cheekily here. What are we looking at, team?
Well, of all the shots you could have used from the trailer,
I wanted to focus on the
not
first
very
word.
evocative of the concept of the movie, but this basically looks like just a robed figure with his back to us, standing at the shore of a lake or a large body of water with a shepherd's crook in one hand, possibly like a Moses type figure, like he's about to part the water or something. But right now, he's just standing there contemplating it and looking at what's either the sunrise or sunset,
Almost
depending.
like they're waiting.
Yeah, perhaps waiting. And in fact, we are waiting for Dali.
Yes.
And I like the premise of this one a lot. This one has kind of a bit of surreal comedy to it. It's this guy at a restaurant who's obsessed with the artist Salvador Dali. My favorite artist quote Salvador Dali when somebody asked him, "Does he do drugs?" and he said, "No, I am drugs."
Boom.
And this restaurateur is obsessed with Dali and trying to get him to visit his restaurant, but he's doing that by cooking increasingly elaborate dishes. And at the same time, this is set against the background of some revolution going on, I guess, or political
It could be
unrest.
the Spanish Civil War. I really should have done more research, but judging from the uniforms of the guys in the trailer, I definitely got a early 30s vibe there. And speaking of vibe, I also got, I don't know if either of you have seen Stanley Tucci's early film Big Night, which is about a pair of brother restaurateurs who are waiting for a big celebrity to come visit their little Italian place they've set up that isn't doing so well. And it's about, yeah, so it's really about them setting up for this big night, which I got here because, as you said, restaurateur hoping to lock a visit from the master of surrealism, who I'd say his mustache is captured in this figure's crook. Here, so
Really?
I'm going to say, Pete, I think this is a perfect still because it shows a guy waiting with a mustache crook like Dali's. So, but yes, there are many more colorful, exciting things I could have chosen instead. But
like
I have a
the
long
scenes from the restaurant and all. But yeah, I would.
I have a long-standing feud with Greg about stills. I like that if you know what you're looking at, it works, but that is expecting you to know what you're looking at. But so
I did not mean to step on your toes.
Oh no. It's all good. And Greg's not here, so what are we gonna do? So, did you catch the trailer for this, James?
I did. I must confess that I don't really gravitate towards films about chefs or restaurateurs. In fact, I can't recall ever willingly watched one. But because you pointed this in my direction and in honor of you both, I promise you I will check this out and I'll give it the time of day. It looked okay, you know. It wasn't immediately my type of thing, but certainly very accomplished and again visually striking. And I think the 30s backdrop will be it's going to be infused with content. You know, I don't think it's too whimsical. There's a kind of European element to it where they're often set amongst the turbulent backdrop of the 20th century, right? I don't want to say it's a well-trodden path, but a lot of very famous kind of European so-called comedies or comedy dramas tend to focus on those events. So, and there's not a great many films made that are set during the Spanish Civil War. So that'll be intriguing, and I'll check it out for those reasons.
It's all right. Maybe we can get their director on and ask them what they think about movies that focus on stage theater.
Yeah,
and
they'll say they love it.
So that is Waiting for Dali, and don't be dismayed by this somewhat darkened picture. There's a whole lot of vibrant stuff going on: mannequins, colorful food, lively Mediterranean doings, and of course the ever-present menace of military jerks in the background about to do whatever it is they end up doing. So that sounds like a good mix for, whimsy and danger. That's often a fun thing to do. Going less, I guess, a little whimsy and danger. This still is the one we have on the website for our review. what are you gentlemen seeing on this image?
Well, it's dark. And a green vehicle driving outside with what looks like plumes of purple smoke going up from it. And it's not quite the Scooby-Doo mystery van, but it's certainly something from the same manufacturer. Let's see here. Oh, yes. Oh, that one. Okay. All right. Yeah, this one's already on our we already did a capsule review of this one, didn't we?
Yeah, Apocrypha candidate review and recommended.
Yeah.
So with this purple haze flaming truck still as chosen by
Wow.
as chosen. So this is a still from the film coming now onto VOD. I believe it had a brief theatrical run, but you can now check out streaming for rental and purchase. I Saw the TV Glow, which is the latest from Jane Schoenbrunn, whom we've covered a bit over the years as she has delved further and further into oddity, much to our delight. The plot for this: two misfit teenagers become obsessed with a paranormal TV show, leading them into delusions that persist into adulthood. James, did you catch the trailer for this one?
Absolutely, I did. And this is an A24 production, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the kind of like, I mean, I suppose they're building up a real reputation for this type of original horror content, right? So that they seem to have a built-in audience, and yeah, I think. I mean, is it alluding to the Scooby-Doo thing? Which wasn't something I really picked up on when I looked at the trailer, even though I must have seen this image. But yeah, I will look at this film. I don't know the director. What else has she done?
Well, let me just quickly open up what we got here. So in addition to I Saw the TV Glow, I caught an earlier film of hers, We're All Going to the World's Fair, which came out during one of the remote Fantasia festivals, which had a similar strange relationship with things we see on the screen, and also similarly kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Black light look in various scenes there. And I just want to see, because I'm pretty sure she's done some other stuff, but
I do know the title of this movie has been trending on Twitter like for weeks now. There's a lot of buzz about this one online.
yeah. And that's yeah, they're Jane, they are getting places. So it looks like this is hard to say. So yeah, this looks like the obviously the latest. There was World Going to the World Fair, and then an earlier film under a different name. But now Jane, as they go by now, is further exploring identity, memory, and really neat lighting effects for at low budget prices. So this is all proven very interesting. And Greg had any number of good words to say about it. So we will of course be linking the VOD options alongside our pretty recent review for that, which I think was only dropped. Okay, yeah, it was only dropped just a little less than a month back. I believe Greg had the good fortune of catching that at his local art house theater that he lucks out with. So this is I Saw the TV Glow, coming to you as soon as you want to rent or buy it video streaming. So that makes that available for a now much broader audience. And as for the Scooby-Doo thing, I believe the actual premise of the show is a sort of Twin Peaksy Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque fake TV show that, from my understanding, may or may not have actually been broadcast. It's hard to say with the unreliable narrative and memories of the characters in question. So that can come straight toward your favorite streaming device. I guess I will, as something of a film snob, recommend the largest streaming device that you can find yourself situated in front of to fully enjoy the many cool things going on there. So that is I Saw the TV Glow. Also, and now we will shuffle on to a couple physical media releases. Here is a still, which
Wow, it sure is.
is may not be what you think, but then again, I don't know what you may think. If either one of you care to describe, there's a detail within an image on this image that sort of is what caught my eye for choosing this as representative of this movie.
Yeah.
What do you see, Pete?
Oh, you called on me.
Oh,
This is an X-ray, a medical X-ray of a malformity. I read this one up, so I'm not going to fall for your trap because I already know what this is about. It is a person growing a horsetail, and it's a very surreal movie about this woman who's apparently a Foley engineer and had to produce horse sounds, and I guess it's making her slowly turn into a horse. And there's that's kind of sort of it, I guess. And she's a very meek person that is trying to deal with that. So she grows a horsetail and runs around with it out tucked out of her, out of her clothing for most of the movie, I guess. Very specific fun for some. I am aware of a pony play fetish subculture out there, so there's that. And between this and Kinds of Kindness also has. I noticed one scene had in the trailer had somebody getting spanked or whipped or something. So between that and this, it's a pretty kinky week here.
yeah. Well, why not? Self-realization, exploring one's own boundaries and interests. It's all good. Did you check out trailer or read the review for this, James?
Absolutely. I looked at the trailer and I thought out of all the ones that I watched that you sent, this was the one that I felt was really up my street. I think it reminded me, not just because of the Foley aspect, but of Peter Strickland's Barbarian Sound Studio. I don't know if you know that movie.
I reviewed that movie.
Yes, that's on our list.
So that started as that's obviously about a Foley artist who becomes who's working on like a Jallet film from in the 1970s. He's gone over to Italy to make that, and he becomes kind of like the world of him making the film and the world of the film kind of blend into one, and so there's an element of that to it. But also Peter Strickland's films, that they're often deal with kind of sensuality and the senses. So Barbarian Sound Studio is very much about sound. You've got is it the Duke of Burgundy, which is about touch and film.
Oh yes, that one.
Yeah, the one about the fabric,
in fabric. Yep.
Fabric, making the dress and touch and things like that. And I think what you've got here is, and that just seemed to be all over this film. It's about sound, it's about touch, it's about sensation, it's about there's a sequence in the trailer where she's brushing the hair of the horse hair and the sound of that and the feel and the touch of that. So it just reminded me of Strickland's work with a bit of body horror kind of thrown in and transformation thrown in. I thought really intriguing, looked terrific. I'm going to give it a go.
And perhaps not even body horror or body joy, because I haven't seen it, but from reading the review and watching the trailer, she seems to get increasingly pleased with life and her experiences through this unlikely transformation. But I guess she's lucky in that she's transforming into a sort of semi-equine beast as opposed to poor Toby Jones, who, as we all know, ultimately transformed into an Italian. So what can you do? Excuse me. Sorry. Forget you heard any of that. And of course, there's no problem with transforming into Italians. It's fine. All right. So that is now on Blu-ray. And I guess I'll close off with one note. It was based on a short film, which I think it's Slam Dance, which was about 13 minutes long, which actually starred one of the co-stars of this film, a gender ambiguous individual who is working on a fully experience for horse sounds, and they too have a speedier, and I believe even much less explained transformation over the course of that. So this is now available Blu-ray for you. And one last little Blu-ray notice, coming all the way from about a century ago, south of the border, for me and Pete anyway, south of the border.
Wow.
James, of course, is France.
Yeah, this is a really old one, like 1932 or so.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah, anyway, it's black and white film, and this looks like a dinner scene with what could be monks or other acolytes gathered around a table with cups and plates set on it. Person at the head apparently saying grace while everyone's standing, and behind them is a huge painted fresco of the Last Supper on the back wall, just to underline the point, I guess.
Yep, and one thing standing out here is most of the acolytes are hooded, bearded gentlemen, but also at the table it looks like there are 3 visitors to whatever monastery or hermitage that these like-minded worshipers are at, dressed in, I'm going to say, contemporary chic of the time. And yes, you were, oh, give me a sign here. Yeah, I think 32 sounds about right. Might be as old as 1930, but definitely early sound horror film from Mexico that is now hitting the world of Blu-ray from the good people at Indicator, who have really upped their game lately with all kinds of unlikely things. You have any thoughts on this, James?
Yeah, it looks fantastic, doesn't it? And you're right about Indicator. They're doing God's work really in terms of restoring and keeping film history, kind of preserving film history, right? Cinematic history, and their releases are really beautiful. And I mean, just look at that still there. Look at the framing on that. You know, it's just it humbles you as a filmmaker. You look at that, and it's humbling. And I don't think. Do you need another plot? 3 visitors turn up at.
That's more than enough for me.
You need one plot in a horror film, and that's the plot. You don't need another one when someone's invented that, right? Just keep remaking that film over and over again. That's what I would do.
Yep.
That's right. Strangers Come to Town, one of the two classic story archetypes. So yeah, this is.
We should mention perhaps that the name of this movie.
Oh yeah, this movie does have a name. Thank you, Pete. The name of this film is The Phantom of the Monastery. And it is now out on Blu-ray from the good people at Indicator. From the trailer I saw in the various stills, it is looking very nice, possibly as nice as it's ever really looked, considering the vintage. So this is now going to be available for horror fans to sink their teeth into, and for those who have sunk their teeth into it already, they can see this non-bootleg version and really soak in the details that you get when serious DVD distribution studios put in the elbow grease and time and effort to whip up a really, really spanking version of an old movie. So,
all right,
that wraps up our weird news. What's going to happen now is virtually nothing for you, the viewer or listener, because as far as you'll see, we'll mysteriously reappear in roughly the exact same positions that we're going to leave on. But for the 3 of us here, we're going to take a very brief break, and then we're going to come back and talk about James Newton's film Katernica. So do stay tuned. Thank you, James, for joining us for the first half, and we will see you for the second half. And of course, we will see Pete for the second half as well. And that is up. I will stop sharing and I will hit this stop recording. So we'll be right back. And we're back. But for you, we never left. But back here we are with the writer and director of the film Katernica, which I had the pleasure of watching and reviewing a few weeks ago at any rate. With me, of course, is the fellow who was with us just minutes ago. James Newton is still here, although if I'm looking at my screen, I believe the order of the individuals has changed slightly. So now Pete is just below my spot, but he's game to discuss movies and such. And of course, our talent guy is going to be asked the probing questions that he's hopefully will come to expect now that he has a second feature length under his belt. Hello, James, and welcome back, everyone.
Thank
now,
you.
Katernica. There are a lot of things going on with this, so I will start with a somewhat broad and open kind of question. Can you describe the genesis of this project? Because there's a story you're telling, there are a lot of things you're referencing, and a lot of what's it's going on. And so I think it might be best if you laid some groundwork for our viewer listeners who might not yet be familiar with the movie in question, which is Katernica.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the storyline, if from want of a better phrase, is about a play, a lost one-act play, written in Germany in the 1930s, which seems to have a strange effect on everyone who comes across it. And it's about the main plot line. You can tell by the way I'm stumbling, I've never been asked to describe this film before, right? The main plot line is a young theatre student who's searching for this play. She happens upon this play and she's trying to find more information about it. And the one person she finds who knows something about it is this washed up actor and former television director. Her sister's also an actor, and the main character wants to put her sister in a performance of this play, which is called Katernica. And it sets off a few events and happenings, and that's about all I can say in terms of the plot. Not because I'm trying to be mysterious, but that's because that's all there is to it, really. Right?
Yeah, and
doesn't go any further than that. And I'm not. I said on the commentary for the Blu-ray when I was putting that together, I was asked to do a commentary on it, and I was trying to drum up 75 minutes worth of conversation to fill the running time of the film. And I'm not really interested in plots. I never have been. I don't think I'm very good at putting it together. I'm interested in art. So it's just, I like to have a jumping off point with which I can explore different ideas within a framework. So that framework of the play that may well be cursed and negatively affects the people it touches is the framework to explore a series of ideas. And that's the plot, and that's the way the film unfolds. The genesis of the story was, it was built out of two different ideas. An idea that I had, which was for a sequel to my previous film called Black Lizard Tales. I mean, I was being a bit ambitious there, given the fact that not many people saw that at all. It wasn't worthy. It wasn't commercially pressed on me to do a sequel. Let's put it that way, right? But I was going to follow the themes that I'd been exploring in that film. And then my co-writer for Katernica, who's also in the film, plays the character of Jerry, Paul Richards. He'd come up with a film script called Katernica, which had this core idea but was very different. So I took elements of his script, put it together with elements of my script, and come up with the Katernica that you've had the pleasure of seeing.
Ah.
Okay, well, that's
All right.
yeah, that's you have described in the movie proper, you've given away maybe the first 5 minutes. So
yeah, I guess I have. Yeah. I mean, that is the plot. I mean, I have this thing where I like to get the plot out of the way in the first 5 minutes of the film. So I'll have two characters talking, tell the audience what's going to happen and what the backstory is, and then we can get on with it. That's the structure I like.
Good, yeah. So this let's start with shall we say the hook. This lost play. Now, considering the subject matter of Katernica, certainly, I'm going to guess you are well versed in the world of stage.
Yeah, I have some experience in that way, and my co-writer Paul as well. He's mostly an actor, so he has some experience in that. And I know a lot of actors, particularly ones who are at the kind of level of that we're working on at the moment. Some success here, they're professional actors, but a lot of them have day jobs. And so part of it was built around that, the experiences that I'd seen and heard there of going to auditions and having to audition, and the idea of kind of like ambitions, but wasted dreams or wasted talent, or maybe people never had talent in the first place, but what does that matter really? Yeah, that was a thing that I was exploring at the time.
Yeah,
the film within the film, the play within the play.
Yeah, because the notion of the cursed one-act play from pre-Nazi Germany, that sounds like like something that would circle around dramatic societies. Is that like actually a legend, so to speak, or is this a conjuration that just was put to hook everything that you wanted to explore with it?
I don't believe so. That section of the script came from Paul. So and he'd written that however many months before I managed to re-look at his manuscript and cannibalize what I liked out of that. And I've never bothered to ask him whether it was based on a true story. I took what I wanted from it, and that's good enough for me, really.
And I will presume that what you took was gladly given by the fellow in question, seeing as he shows up in the movie that you've done.
Yeah, it's a kind of strange collaboration, really. Because when I say that it was taken from his scripts, I think the character of the director that he was playing was taken from another one of his scripts. So I took this kind of core idea from Katernica, and I liked the title, and another character from another script that he'd written, which the last time I talked to him, actually, he said he'd forgotten he'd written that. So I had to remind him of it. And then I fitted it together with what I was doing, and it became a kind of patchwork fitting together of the script. And I wrote it in about 3 days. But remember, about kind of great stretches of it are were lifted from these scripts that Paul had written. And it's the way we've written before. The way we tend to write. It's he will write a script, I'll rewrite it, then he might rewrite it again, and then we kind of leave it at that. Or it might even be he writes one scene, then I write a following scene, give it to him. He writes the scene that comes after that, and that's the way we tend to collaborate. We used to be in bands together, so our songwriting used to be quite like that. I'd do the lyrics, give it to him. Whatever music he came up with, that was it. We like that kind of organic approach. And Katernica was just another example of the way that it was built through work that we'd been doing. It wasn't with an aim in mind, like we want to explore these themes, so all of these things have to happen. It's like, what have we got? I'm very confident that we put this together, we'll be able to explore the themes that we like within this. So, for example, in the film, there's a sequence where the character of Jerry, that Paul plays, does an audition, and he's asked to audition a character that he's been coming up with, and I came up with the idea of this character performing an audition, and I said to Paul, I've got this scene, your character performs this audition for this kind of theatre company who are putting on a play. I need you to perform this character on stage as if it's your audition piece. I didn't know what that was going to be. I sent it to Paul, and then 2 days later, I don't think even 2 days later, actually, it might have even been about 20 minutes later, he comes up with this character.
The minor, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's called the gluttonous master in the film, but he's got that kind of minor. Yeah,
I believe he's holding a little pickaxe.
That's exactly what it is, and he's got the line about going down the pit as well. So it's absolutely in mind. So that's well spotted on that one, Giles. And And I wasn't expecting it to be that. Now, that character is based on a real person. So that character is based on a person who used to hang around Paul's village, who'd kind of lost his mind in
yeah,
being a miner, doing coal mining. So that was based on a particular character that Paul knew growing up.
Okay. Yeah, no, I went into Katernica pretty much totally blind and haven't really, I really only have the movie and now your recent remarks. You mentioned being in a band with this effectively a collaborator fellow, and before in the earlier segment you mentioned the interest in sound. And I do believe when we were in our email conversation, when you shared another screener link with us to get us up to speed, you said the only thing that might be different from what I saw was the sound. So sound is obviously very important to you here, and there's a bit that goes on in this movie with the sound. I wonder if you might talk about what it is you're doing and your process for it, because this is obviously at least as important as what we're seeing.
Yeah, do you mean throughout the film or in a particular?
Yeah, as you approach cinema simultaneously, audio, to the same extent as visual, is what I'm kind of getting here.
Yeah, I mean, in definitely in certain scenes, and maybe later, if there's time, I'll talk a little bit about the new film that should be coming out by the end of the year, where the sound's possibly even more important than in Katernica. But I think it's just a way of. I mean, you hear a lot of people say that sound is as important as the image. I'm sure it is at some stage. I think there's something that they become indelibly linked. I think in the what Michael Sheon, the sound theorist, would say is that it kind of embodies sound, gives body to the image.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
And so, but what I like to do, particularly in a film like Katernica, where the sounds aren't necessarily always what we might expect. They don't necessarily have fidelity to what we are seeing on screen. So nearly all of the sound in Katernica, I think, is built in post-production, with the exception of the dialogue. So if you hear footsteps, the footsteps aren't necessarily from that environment. If it's the person walking onto a stage, it might not be those shoes, that plank that they're walking on. It might be they're walking on a hard floor, or it might be me doing it, wearing completely different shoes to the character that we're actually seeing on screen. So there's a kind of, I suppose, a disconnect between the images that we're seeing and the sound that we're hearing. Now, that lack of fidelity there between what we see and what we hear might not be noticeable instantly by the audience, but I think it lends a kind of sense of the uncanny to what we see, or it can do. Not always. A lot of times, what audiences do is they look at they look at the image, they see the sound, they just assume that the sound is coming from the image that they're seeing, whereas not always. And if I can go back to a bit of film theory again, the Sheon talks about that the example that he uses in one of his books, I think it's Audio Vision, the book is called, is there's a scene in Terminator 2 where Sarah Connor is running down the corridor. She's escaping from the mental hospital and she's barefooted. But when she walks down the corridor, she runs down the corridor, even though she's barefooted, the sound is of clip-clopping high heels on hard floor, right? But you don't notice it, you don't even second guess it. Because you see her feet running, the sound is not the sound of bare feet on the floor, there's the sound of hard shoes on the floor. And so you just put the two together. I don't know whether this is answering the question or not, other than to say is that the sound is obviously really an interesting and a hugely creative area with which I like to explore. I have to say, on top of that, I'm not the best sound recordist, or it's not like I'm a brilliant technician in that regard. A lot of the time it's just recording it the best that I can, getting a sense of how it might sound, But very often I get somebody, a technician who's working on the film to come and listen to it for me or help me to mix it better. And even though I've been in bands, I'm an appalling musician. And but I know people who are better musicians. And the music for Katernica is created by Paul's brother Mark, who is a kind of genius musician. And so what I tend to do is bring together is telling the kind of thing that I'm looking for, and he'll come up with the music, for that, or he might provide some background sound for me, and then I can. So there's a real collaborative element of it. Yes, that's more like it.
Now, Pete, if you care to elaborate for those of us who don't have the pleasure of watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. What were you just showing to our guests?
I was just pulling some music books off the shelf behind me because I blog a lot about music, and that's been one of my gigs. However, Mr. Newton, you have some books out there yourself, do you not? That you have authored?
Yes, that's true. I do.
Yes.
I have
and
two.
There's one about exploitation movies, as a matter of fact. Oh wow, I love you already. All right. That's it was called Mad Max something. After Mad Max, post Mad Max, the Mad Max syndrome. What was it called?
It's the book's called The Mad Max Effect.
The Mad Max Effect. Right. All right.
It's about.
I'll be sure to get that one.
Yeah, sure. It's relatively decently priced. I think it's academic publishing, but the paperbacks, it's a decent price. Even if I do say so myself.
So it's academic. You mean it's intended for university material, not just?
Well, not really. I mean, it's in the sense of it's academic publishing, but I like to try and write it in as an accessible style as possible. What I'm saying is, if you buy the hardback version, it's something like £90 or however many dollars.
£90, okay.
If you buy the paperback version, it's £20, right? Which is obviously
And of course,
anyway,
I guess
we brought up music because both of you have now been involved in some kind of band at the point, right? Anyway,
is that you in a band? Oh, but me or did you mean
both
me?
of you, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've that's how we kind
you
of
mentioned the band, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is going back a long time, and I played bass guitar in the band with Mark and Paul, and it was kind of garage, punky, rock, bluesy rock stuff.
Funky, bluesy rock stuff. Got it.
Yeah, but it's going back a long time, and since then we've, we get together very, very occasionally. We might do some music if we need some music for a film, or more commonly, I'll ask his brother to produce some music for me, and he's done the music for my last 3 films. So.
All right. Okay.
Well, glad. Yeah. Thank you for calling that from thank you for drawing that from our guests there, Pete. And while you were having that exchange, I suppose we can mention that there is a JamesEdwardNewton.com that.
There is, except I will be closing that website soon.
Oh.
And,
check it out while you can. JamesEdwardNewton.com is about to be closed.
I'm going to close it for this for the reasons I think everything just becomes unwieldy. It's got material on there that's quite old. I think the best thing to do is to go to my YouTube or the Vimeo and.
That is the direction the kids are headed these days, and that's why we're doing this podcast this way. So we got That's I like the scattershot approach there because that's covered a lot of ground kind of quickly. I'm going to draw us back to the movie Katernica. Now, I drew a number of things from it. Checking it out on IMDb, I can see that it is woefully underviewed so far, such that there is one critic review available, and it's mine, which I always feel a little awkward when that's the case, but I do have a number of good things and possibly insightful ones. This is it's not the longest movie, but it does have a lot of the interesting things going on. It has that minor sequence. It has that your your own personal exploration into sound and potential uncanny valley there. And I do want to at least take a moment while I remember to inquire about perhaps the uncanniest, one of the uncanniest movie characters I've ever seen, certainly at all recently, in the form of, I guess he's a producer, maybe, in the movie. He's also some sort of entity with motives not entirely clear. He's a guy referred to as Mr. Case. And
That's
I'm
correct.
wondering if you might be able to discuss, and at least for my sake, illuminate a little bit about just what is up with Mr. Case, and also in regards to the fellow who performed as Mr. Case, which I believe was Tony Martin.
That's correct. It would be really awkward at this point, wouldn't it, Giles, if this is just the way Tony is in real life? But and he's got some form of condition but that's not the case, right? He's a very, very, very normal, average person, and he's yeah. So I wouldn't want to give too much away, other than to draw attention to your own words here, where you said that he wants to. It's almost as if he wants to get out of his own skin, and the way I again, I don't want to give anything away, and it wasn't necessarily written with this is the intention that he's an alien, because the character isn't an alien. But the way I described it in the script, and the way I described it to Tony when we were discussing how to perform this character, was as if he is an alien who's come down and doesn't understand human communication, right? And he's somehow what we see on the outside of him is not the real him, and the real him is inside. Hence why he's being given fed his lines by this other character, and he struggles to verbalize and get his words out. That was about as much direction as I gave Tony, and after that, and Tony Martin is an actor who's very familiar from the kind of British no-budget horror scene, of which I suppose I'm part. And he's also making his own film called Witches of the Sands, which is he's been making now for 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, but it's his own particular vision. But with Tony, as an actor, you just kind of wind him up and you let him go, right? And that's why he's cast. That's why I cast him. He's a person that you get in to deliver a particular type of performance, and he's an actor with a lot of range. But when you give him this free rein, he can really dig into and understand the tone of what it is that you're looking for. And so I knew he was perfect for this role. But what was really interesting about it was, because these films are made for virtually nothing. We don't really have a rehearsal process apart from a couple of Zoom meetings and a couple of phone calls. And when I went to meet him before we were due to shoot this, he'd written the exact same notes that I had in my head on his own script, which were virtually the same, interestingly, which is what you picked up on in your review about him, struggling to get out, being extremely uncomfortable in his own skin. And that was that was it. After that point, I just want to see him perform it.
Yeah.
Then it's a question of upping it or taking it down. There was a couple of moments, I think, where, particularly in the hospital scene, where I had to ask him to tone it down slightly, just so we could get some of the plot across.
Okay.
So, but that's what you do with actors, right? You oftentimes I cast them because I know they're going to deliver roughly what I want them to deliver anyway, and then it's just a question of saying, go a bit further, pull it a little bit back, tuning it exactly. So yeah, and Tony I've worked with now 3 times, and I've done a bit of assistant directing on his film Witches of the Sands, which when it finally gets finished, you might be interested in. It stars a whole host of people who've been in horror films from the past, like Ian McCulloch from Zombie Flesh Eaters,
Oh,
Linnea Quigley is in it.
Linnea Quigley.
Yeah, all sorts of different people. If you look down the cast, I mean, it's quite it's kind of lots of people who've been cast members from old horror films from the 70s and 80s, from Hammer horror
Right up my alley. I practically live and breathe horror films from the 70s and 80s.
Okay, yep. Oh, well, ain't this something? Witches of the Sands, directed by Tony Martin. I see the page now. It's got Tony Martin, of course, Deborah Land, Linnea Quigley, Donnelly Heising, Lloyd Kaufman, Lynn Lowry. Okay, yep. Ian
From
McCullough.
drama films?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He stars as producer of distinguished horror movies. Okay. Well, that sounds absolutely fascinating and is now officially on our radar. Okay, yeah, because I devoted a paragraph to that character because I think there are three levels of mysteriousness in Katernica. There's the sort of base one where you have the go-getter grad student theater, the young woman who, stumbles across this, mysterious, dangerous script. And the sort of flip side of her, but still fairly normal, is the Jerry character to start with. And then you have the pregnant sister and her foil, well, for lack of a better understanding of what's going on, the nurse character. And then then there's this peak with Mr. Case and his involvement and his ultimate ambitions, which may or may not have come true. There's some confusion to be had there that I have every reason to suspect is intentional. Now, this sort of, this fusion of very workaday theater and very opaque supernatural. Now that, I've seen theater movies and, I've seen opaque supernatural movies, but this combination, and as you've mentioned any number of times, low budget, I'm going to say the one number I've seen thrown around for this was somewhere around $1,000, might be £1,000, I'm not sure. And it's the kind of thing that I find reassuring, and I'm going to try to deliver this in the right way. I'm always very pleased when I see such a number and such a result, because I am heartened at what can be done by creative people who are effectively in this to tell their story. As you said yourself, also, you made a sequel without anyone asking you to. And so this was obviously, an ambition of yours to keep going with this exploration of themes you had. And that's really, I think, maybe the best way to look at Katernica is an exploration of themes, because there is a story or three going on there. None of which...
Well,
yeah, you interrupt me, please. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm begging you. Start talking.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, there was the way I would see this, and the way I see all my films, and people ask me to explain the way the plot is delivered, if they think it's maybe too, as you say, opaque or obtuse, or coming from an angle that doesn't make much sense, is that it makes sense to me. And if I may just deviate very slightly, it's a really kind of got a nice metaphor. There's Alex Cox, of course, who directed Repo Man and things like that. And he wrote a book called 10,000 Ways to Die, which is about spaghetti westerns. And in that, he's in the introduction to that, and he says, the old John Wayne movies now never meant much to us when we were children, but when we were teenagers growing up in Liverpool, the kind of what felt like the utter kind of surreal randomness of spaghetti westerns, just seemed to make sense to the life that we lived in Liverpool, where random violence would happen. When you're young, world doesn't seem to make sense. And I think I wasn't brought up in Liverpool, but I was brought up in a kind of similar a town in Wolverhampton in the 1980s, and the world doesn't always figure the way dovetail together the way that it does in movies, right, or in stories. And I've always been interested in the way that things seem to appear to be, I don't like the word, but random or random chance in the way that things come together. To me, without wishing to sound pretentious, there's nothing unusual in the structure of Katernica and the way all the different characters fit together. I can see and appreciate, however, if you're not looking at it through my eyes, then then it doesn't follow the structure of what we would expect narrative cinema to follow. There's no cause and effect chain where we understand these set of motivations and actions because they're a result of these motivations and actions that are from these characters. Yeah. But then that's also life to me, and so I like those gaps and I like those leaps where that just seems to be the way that life unfolds for most of us. In some respects, the way that it leaps and moves and shifts, it may seem dreamlike if we're looking at a film, but if we compared it to our own lives, it would make a hell of a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, I've been stuck in my office now for several hours, right? And I can't remember what happened for the last 4 hours when but somehow 4 hours has gone by, and at the time it felt like things were happening. Now I can't even remember what I was doing. So I think it makes sense to me, and I think, but I can appreciate how if you were used to the cause and effect chain of traditional narrative cinema, then it might appear as if it's doing something strange.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that much more eloquently there. Obviously, I will admit a considerable lack of understanding, shall we say, of the logical chains, as you mentioned there. But I'm also utterly untroubled by not understanding. This is your movie, borrowed a little bit from your buddy, of course, with his blessing and collaboration there. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that I know several people whom I'm friends with that this movie would absolutely infuriate, because they very much enjoy the linear progression of logic of action to reaction to, so on down the sequence. Whereas smarter people may get more from what you're doing here and what other directors who have this, shall we say, approach. But I don't mind not getting something so long as what I'm seeing I find compelling.
Yeah, I think
Giles, no one is smarter than you, Giles. No one.
And also, don't forget, this is me as an artist and a creator. That's not necessarily what I'm always watching. I mean, I like nothing more. I put on Canon Charles Bronson films, right? I might put one on when I get back tonight, right? I like nothing more than narrative cinema. But it's not the only kind of show in town, is it? And I think I've always approached it again. This idea of art, like music, like film, they kind of blend into each other. We don't expect music to make sense. We don't expect abstract art necessarily to make sense. I don't even know if we expect representational art to make sense. It just is, and we accept it on its own terms. And it's never been it was never a question to me until you start presenting in front of other people. And you were talking, the word identity cropped up a little bit in the first part of the show earlier, and I wonder whether there's an element there where how you don't understand yourself until you see somebody else sees you and reacts to you, right? It's like a child growing up, right? You're utterly self-conscious, right? It's what Adam and Eve's about, right? This coming together of the birth of the ego, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden we see ourselves reflected in something, and oh no, now we're ashamed. Oh, and I think there's an element of that to the kind of this filmmaking and this art, this creation of moving image, where it's only when you put it against what's so-called normal that you start. Oh, hang on a minute, maybe this isn't. But I'm learning to get over that reticence and to that. I'm learning to get over that shame, I think. And one thing I tried to do with Katernica was push all the way through that. and not worry too much about whether it made sense narratively. Because then you go down all sorts of routes. Then, oh, now I've got a film. Oh, I've got a fucking film turning up at the theatre. Now I've got to do an establishing shot. So you've got to go. Now you've got to do these linking scenes that link all these scenes together, and it's before you know it, you're filming a load of stuff you don't want to film and you don't you don't really care about. That's the way. Another factor here. I always love what Monty Python said was, "How do we finish this? How do we finish this sketch?" We'll just cut here, right?
Cut here, footfalls. It's good. All right. Well, we are speaking of finishing sketches. We are running out of time, so a couple questions before we wrap up. Do you have any? You mentioned some collaborations and the like. Do you have any current film projects or other things you'd like to plug right now or talk about briefly?
Yeah, in a couple of weeks' time, I should be having a new short film out, which is about 8 or 9 minutes long, which I'm just editing and finishing the sound, funnily enough, right now, and the grading. So that'll be out on my YouTube in a couple of weeks' time. And by the end of the year, my new feature film called When the Sun Stands Still, which is another collaboration with Paul, and also features Tony as well. It should be coming out, and that's very briefly. It's about a young woman who's 20 years old who goes missing, and the search for her. But you know, like Katernica, that's just the starting off.
And then it'll fall off somewhere delightful, I'm sure. Excellent, cool. All right. And I guess, yeah, before we totally wrap up, there's one question at 366 we like to ask all our interview victims here. Could you tell us what your hometown is, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
The hometown where I was brought up was Wolverhampton, and I can't the Dilshad Indian restaurant would be the one I would recommend there. I currently live in Canterbury, which is in Kent, in the UK, and yeah, there's a restaurant called the Pig, which is very nice.
The Pig in Canterbury in Kent. That is fantastic. And there's a pig. Oh, it's an action pig. Nice. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm a little out of it, but I very much enjoyed our conversation here. We've been chatting with excuse me. We've been chatting with James Edward Newton, filmmaker and otherwise man about town, whose Blu-ray release of Katernica is available with a feature-length commentary, apparently. So nab that, give it a look. Thank you very much, James. And Pete, thanks for riding along shotgun.
Thank you. And once again, thank you very much for the review. Thank you very much for reaching out to me. And thank you for inviting me onto your space. And I hope that was worthwhile. And I hope your listeners and viewers get something from that and enjoy it.
And thank you for your very candid and eloquent glimpse into your creative process there when you're describing that. That's always fascinating stuff.
Not at all. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.